Dino Crisis, originally released in July of 1999. But we are talking about the recent PC version of this, released February of 2026. Available for $9.99 on both Steam and GOG. For those unfamiliar, Dino Crisis was a PlayStation 1 game made by Capcom. It had gameplay and mechanics very similar to that of the original Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. However, instead of being about police officers fighting zombies, Dino Crisis was essentially the woman from Fifth Element having to fight her way through Jurassic Park. So you'll have the inventory management and tank controls of Resident Evil, but instead of fighting zombies and other bioengineered monsters, you'll be fighting dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals. If you are completely unfamiliar with Dino Crisis, or the original versions of the Resident Evil franchise, the controls will take some getting used to, as games in general have long since moved away from this style of tank controls. And it's not to say that these controls are necessarily bad, they are just very different from what you're likely used to. The story on offer is pretty standard for the time. You are part of a special operations team that is sent to retrieve a scientist. Of course, once you get there, things very quickly go off the rails. One of your team members didn't arrive with everyone else, as they were blown off course. And you find that all the facilities on the island are completely devoid of people. It's safe to assume that something terrible happened here before your team ever arrived. Another thing this game borrows from the early Resident Evils is the cheesy voice acting. This makes cutscenes a little hard to take seriously at times.
Gina, I took care of the shutter. You should be able to access the control panel now.
Already? That was quick. Thanks.
Hey girl, just get going.
So you will wander about the facility, fighting some dinosaurs, finding some locked doors. And of course, every time you find a locked door, I can promise you that the key will be very far away from that door. Pretty much survival horror 101. You do have a map, however, oftentimes it can be a little misleading, as it shows the rooms on the map, but it can be a little hard to tell exactly how they are connected, as the connection points are technically marked, but I found the markings to be a little hard to actually see at a glance. But in a surprising twist, sometimes the other two members of your team have different ideas about what needs to be done, and depending which one of them you go along with will actually affect the game, as one of them will lead you down a more puzzle-focused route, while the other one will lead you to a more combat-heavy route, but each option will actually affect the story to a certain degree. Which was not a common thing back in '99 when this game first came out. Also surprising in this game is how the dinosaurs actually got to this island. As with the influence from Resident Evil, as well as the popularity of Jurassic Park, you might guess that it's genetic experimentation that brought the dinosaurs here. It turns out that's not the case. What it actually ends up being is outright kind of silly, but I also won't spoil that here. You can find that out when and if you ever play the game. It is interesting that this is a fairly faithful port of the PlayStation 1 original. Textures look a little smoother, but it's not really a night and day difference if you were to look at the original. You do have the option to change the controls to an extent, but you can't really give it a modern control scheme. This is very much a warts and all port of the game. There is absolutely no attempt here to remaster or polish up anything. And I actually think that's a good thing, as this does give an excellent way for a modern audience to experience this game in about the same way as someone would have, well, over 20 years ago. So is Dino Crisis worth your time and money? Well, as the asking price is only $10 on both GOG and Steam, I would absolutely recommend Dino Crisis, as if you do remember playing the original back on the PlayStation, this will be a great nostalgia trip. And if you're not familiar with Dino Crisis and would just like to see what early survival horror games were like, this is an excellent and cheap way to have that experience. And I'm personally hoping that other Capcom games from the PlayStation 1 get a similar treatment, as I would love to see the original versions of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 get this same treatment, or something from a different genre like Breath of Fire 3 and 4 get this kind of treatment. But only time will tell. In the meantime, I absolutely do recommend this new PC version of Dino Crisis. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and tell your friends.